What's up, everybody? What's good? Welcome back to more esports news here at Esports Talk. Today we try and break down the confusing state of mind over at Epic Games because I actually derive joy from all of their updates. If you guys have been here since the start of August when mechs were first released, let's try and track this timeline together of why Epic Games might be the most confusing developer on the face of planet Earth with the things they add, they change, they fully revert, they bring it back. It's the most confusing timeline, and somehow people still enjoy and love their game. As you should. It's a great game, but still, this timeline stretches all the way back to August 1st, when of course mechs were first notoriously released, and of course many of us, a community backlash was, I should say, pretty extreme. Many people, for good reason, calling this one of the most overpowered items in the game's history, and rightfully so. When you think back before the major nerf we'll talk about in a second here, these mechs were extremely powerful, especially in the right hands of some very solid players out there. It took about a week or so before they met with a small nerf, you know, classic Epic Games. We're not going to fully change these things like the planes. We'll slowly nerf them. We're not going to fully revert them. God forbid we waste that work. So it took about a week or so before they added the laser, where you can now see the rockets before they take your life away, alongside a very small spawn rate nerf as well for them overall. Now this is where the big backlash did begin. I mean, by golly, guys, you never really see this many pro players or players in general quit amongst a Twitch Rivals event. On top of that, Tfue, Booga, Sway, Courage. If you ever get Courage to say the F-bomb multiple times, you know that you've probably made an update that's not exactly a good one for the community. So the timeline does continue, and it was actually almost a month later after release where they fully released the giant nerf for mechs, and we finally reached a point in the game where people were like, hey, Epic, it only took you 4 weeks to respond, but you're finally listening. We almost love you again. And then before you even really use the update itself, within 3 days, it was all gone. As they released a giant nerf for turbo building out there, making placements which were once actually 0.005 seconds. They made a correction in that blog post as well, changed it all the way to 0.15 seconds. A gigantic and obviously noticed change by many people out there, especially in the now frequently used clip of Myth, who was one of the first people to realize you can no longer 90 with that update. So within 3 days, you nerf the mechs to a point where, yes, you can actually build against them and take them down and maybe not even get in them. And then within 3 days, after so much backlash, what do? You take away the one way you could actually defend yourself against a mech, that being building. Now, this was to combat advantages, though, with lower ping. If you were taking a wall or building in general, you had the general advantage if you did have lower ping. So I understand where it was coming from, but a pretty drastic change, right? Those placements going from 0.005 to 0.15. Yes, they might be minor increments in seconds, but you guys can just see in the comment breakdown, that's a giant change to make out of nowhere. So it did make general sense, but if you would have tested the game at all, people mentioning this, if you had any devs, any of your team members actually try this out in the game, it was an obvious and noticeable change that probably people would not very much like. And so why make that drastic change without any sort of testing? Or maybe they did test it and thought, you know what, people are gonna love this. And then within, I would say, about a span of 24 to 36 hours, even Ninja was playing Minecraft by this point. Dozens of pro players had quit by this time. Of course, WoW Classic also dropped, so plenty of pros like Tim the Tatman alongside Cloaksy and Dr. Lupo, they had gone to WoW Classic. Ninja was on freaking Minecraft, and all of a sudden, Epic Games, for the first time I think maybe ever, they thought, oh my god, not everyone loves our game. We might actually have to revert some changes here. They revert the turbo build nerf as well. Still, though, making some very weird changes, because now when it comes time for actually taking a structure, it is now a very weird RNG business. So when your actual structures do get destroyed, also most importantly, replacing those structures are still going to take 0.15 seconds, which, as you guys probably noticed over the past few days, that does mean minigun spam, SMG spam. You're going to be shooting through walls a ton more and doing damage as well, which is great if you're not the one, you know, in defense mode, but unfortunately enough, it's going to be a huge change. Alongside that, another RNG change, which I am very skeptical about. It does make somewhat of logical sense. I'm curious what you guys think about this as well. Now, when it comes, though, for taking walls, if two players take a structure or take a wall at the same time, a random number generator decides who actually gets that placement. That's really weird. Because before, if you had the ping advantage, you could just hold your wall entirely, and yes, that does make sense, and especially with that placement as well, not being 0.15 seconds, you weren't taking damage. You could hold a wall. So these changes do make, in a term, logical sense. Will they actually work out in the game, though? I'm not really sure, because it happens, I'm sure, more than you guys can even count, the amount of times people take the same wall at the same time, but now it's going to be RNG based as to who actually gets to take that wall. it's going to be some weird changes. So again, we're trying to follow this confusing timeline of Epic Games. Not many other developers get away with this kind of stuff. It takes them nearly a month to actually nerf the mechs entirely. Then they actually nerf turbo building, your only defense against it. They take things back, they put them back then in the game, they change them, they revert them. I'm really confused, but hopefully this will be the right update for everyone out there. I just don't think it will be. After all this, after all said and done, 4 weeks later, we are still at a really weird point now of our building, as well as turbo building, 90s, whatever you want to call it. Taking walls has now become RNG, and mechs are still in the game, which could still be, somewhat useful. A very confusing state of mind currently for Fortnite, as well as Epic Games out there, and certainly a confusing one to try and track and follow. We will see what their next update is, and if it ruins the game somehow anymore. As always, my name is Jake, breaking down esports and gaming news here all day long. I hope you guys all enjoy. Several good stories coming later today, and they will be a lot less confusing than this one was. Until then, take care. I'll see you soon.